What are the four pillars of object-oriented programming, and what's the purpose of each? The four pillars of object-oriented programming are abstraction, inheritance, encapsulation, and polymorphism. Abstraction is showing only the essential features that are needed in an application while hiding all of the details, or like creating a private method for an internal function that's going to be used by other methods. Anybody consuming this doesn't need to see the different all of the methods. Only the ones that they need to call would be public, but you can use abstraction to kind of help hide some of those details. Encapsulation is incorporating or binding all of the related data and variables and different things like that, methods and functions together in one class. So anything that pertains to like a car class would be incorporated in there. The make, the model, possible top speed, something to calculate the miles per hour, calculate the average gas mileage, anything like that. All of those fields, properties, methods would be encapsulated inside the car class. Inheritance is the third one. An inheritance is the process of reusing or extending a class by including a base class or the base class code in another class, which is called the derived class. So if there are certain features that are similar amongst multiple classes, then those can be reused. For example, first name, last name, date of birth, all of those would be properties that would be found in, not only we could put them in a person class, but then that person class could be the base class for a teacher class, a student class, an employee class, each of which would then have more specific properties and fields and things like that. But all of those similar fields could be in the base class, and the base class would be inherited by those derived classes. And then the fourth one is polymorphism. And polymorphism lets us create different functions that act differently but with the same name. So for example, I could create a calculate interest method, and then depending on the class, I could overload that method if interest was calculated differently from one class to another. And so I can do things like that. Polymorphism also allows us to pass in a base class as a replacement for a derived class if needed. And so, like in the other example, I could pass in a person class into something that required either an employee class or a student class or a teacher class, as long as employee, teacher, or student derived from the person class. If it didn't derive, then I can't pass it in. But as long as it is derived, polymorphism says I can pass the base class in as an argument for something that is expecting one of its derived classes. So those are the four pillars of object-oriented programming: abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism.